Folks, thanks for taking some time to join us this evening. My name is Zach Emmons. I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Communications for the Houston Dynamo Football Club. And I'm excited. I'll be moderating the town hall conversation tonight. And I think I speak for all of us. I know I'm excited to get a chance to visit with our new majority owner and chairman, Ted Segal. As just before I bring Ted in, as y'all can probably imagine, we received a ton of great questions from everybody. Way more than we could possibly get to in the hour that we have. But most of those questions fell into the same kind of buckets of themes that people wanted to touch on. Certainly Ted's philosophy as an owner and his kind of expectations for the club overall. A lot of questions about the Dynamo, what the general manager search, roster spend, things like that. A lot of questions about the Dash and how we elevate their profile. Questions about the stadium and the guest experience there. Ticket sales and ticket pricing and attendance, some of those questions, and then marketing and promotion, how and promoting the team and what we're doing on that standpoint. So want to make sure we get a chance to touch on all of those. But first, obviously, want to introduce the new majority owner and chairman of the Houston Dynamo Football Club, Ted Segal. Ted, thanks for taking some time to chat with us tonight.
Thank you, Zach, and thank you for taking some time, and thank you for all of you out there for joining. I first want to say that all of you are in my thoughts down there in Houston as you're affected by Nicholas. I hope all of you and your families are safe, and want to thank you again for turning out for your support. I know it's been a tough run of play. I'm glad to be joining you tonight on the heels of our first victory during my tenure as owner, and looking forward to brighter days ahead for both the Dynamo and the Dash.
Awesome. Well, Ted, let's get right to it. I know we've got an hour and we get started a little bit late, so we'll try and maybe make that up on the back end, but I want to get to as many questions from people as possible. Starting off, I'm going to take a little bit of liberty, ask a question of my own, only because I didn't see anybody else ask it, and I think it's important to kind of level set. You mentioned starting your tenure as an owner. We're 84 days in since you were introduced as the majority owner of the club. Tell me about what the process has been like for you. You go from evaluating an asset that you might be purchasing to now running a company. What's that onboarding process been like for you? How's these 84 days been in terms of getting familiar with this organization now?
So it's oft used cliche, but it really has been drinking from a fire hose, I would say, Zach. For as much preparation as you can do in advance of the acquisition and what you expect your ownership to be like, it's an entirely different thing once you assume the ownership. And certainly, I knew going in how important these clubs are to our community, and the important role that I have as a steward of a community asset. But then to actually take the reins during a challenging moment in time, particularly for the Dynamo, you feel the weight of the team's performance. And look, as I've begun to familiarize myself with various facets of the organization, be it on the business side or be it on the sporting side, we're in a process of assessing where we can improve, where we're doing well, and there's always room to do better in a lot of respects. Unfortunately, in one regard, we had to part ways with Matt Jordan, who, again, I'll say it over and over again, is extraordinarily fine individual who was deeply invested in the success of this club. But we felt that there was a moment in time here where we needed to move on, and so we've done that, and we've commenced our search, and I know we'll get into that a little bit more during the course of this conversation, all with the objective of building a successful organization on and off the pitch.
Okay, I appreciate that, and yeah, I want to kind of start talking about maybe your philosophy as an owner and how you look at things big picture, and then from there we'll get into definitely the GM search and some more Dynamo specific things and Dash specific things. First question I want to get to though comes from Brandon Campbell. Brandon is an original Dynamo member since 2006. It kind of aligns with what I just asked you, but he wanted to know, what are the results of your evaluation of the organization so far, particularly ticketing and sales, stadium operations, things like that, and what processes are you planning to implement to rebuild the fan culture?
With respect to any conclusions that we've made, I would say it's far too early to have definitive conclusions 84 days in. I think we're still very much in the assessment process, gathering information and trying to figure out where we can make improvements. I think in certain areas there were, to use another cliche, so to speak, some low-hanging fruit that we knew right away that we can improve upon. So for example, we made the announcement early in our tenure about the implementation of safe standing going into next season. I thought that was an obvious thing that we could do that I think our supporters have been asking for some time. And that's just one of many facets of our analysis into our organization's physical infrastructure at the stadium, at the training grounds, that we're doing to understand where we can improve both our team's performance and our fan experience.
Next one I want to get to, we got a lot of questions about this. Folks asking about kind of the structure of the ownership group and how involved with the current minority owners. So Gabriel Brenner, Oscar De La Hoya, Ben Gill, and James Harden. How involved will they be in the decision-making process as it pertains to specifically like things like roster and transfer spending, academy investment, things like that? And this comes from Jay and Hanson, who's a fan, lives up in New York, up your way.
Got it. I am the clear majority owner and chairman by virtue of our partnership arrangement and by virtue of what the league mandates. There is one and only decider, and that person is me. Now, I value and respect the input of my partners. I welcome it. In many cases, or in all of these cases, these are individuals who have experience with the organization that precedes me. And I'm sure there is some worthwhile perspective. They're open and willing to share it, and I'm welcoming of it. In addition, we do have scheduled quarterly meetings. One is coming up in the near future, and that is a means of me to update my partners on what we're doing at the organization, and for me to hear them out.
And Jay, and actually, it was a two-part question. He touched on another question that certainly came up quite a bit, and I'll ask it at risk of putting my own neck on the line here. But obviously, you made the decision with Matt. Folks were asking, where's the next? Where are you, I guess, in the evaluation process on the front office side of the organization?
I've used this phrase often, and I'm going to continue to use it. We're going to give everybody a fair shake to perform. And so I would say that no conclusions have been made as to any other changes to the organization on the business end.
Okay. Next one I want to get to is from Felipe Quevedo. Felipe is another original Dynamo member since 06, Dash since 2014 as well. Just kind of wants to know what your vision for the team, both teams, is over the next 5, 10, 15 years. And also what are some of the benchmarks that you've set to get to that vision?
Yeah, so I think the plans, be it 5, 10, or 15 years across, are consistent throughout, and that's success for the organization. Now, what is success? That is both success on the field, that is winning, and leaving our mark in the community. And so it's very easy to measure success. It's wins, losses, and draws, and playoff appearances and championships. So that's an easy metric. The other element that I measure success by is our impact on the community. And part of that is fostering a connection, again, through winning on the pitch, but it is also how we can leave our mark as a franchise, as two franchises within the community, the good works that we can do. We've announced some of them. We have several coming up down the line. And I think that is a metric which you can measure in a few ways. Number one, for example, to the extent that we are dedicating new mini pitches, you can count how many of those there are. How that translates into growing the sport in our community, maybe developing a player who comes out of their first experience playing on those mini pitches. that's a less tangible metric, but the objective should be doing good works that connect us to the community.
Okay. Staying kind of on metrics and data, Zach Berry, who's a newer Dynamo member, joined in 2018, asked, so many of the historical great teams in MLS have integrated data analytics into their decision-making process. How have you used data in your decision-making processes in your career to date? And then how do you plan on integrating that within the club now as well?
So I think that in any business, certainly in my day-to-day non-soccer role and in our soccer role, it's inevitable that you're going to use data to make analyses and make decisions and inform your decisions. But it really is a question of how you use that data, because there's an abundance of data, and you can gather to ad infinitum, but if you're not using it in a smart tactical way, that's not going to yield the results that you want. And so look, there's a lot that we can do on the analytics side to enhance our performance on the pitch, from understanding how to optimize our players' performances, understanding which players to target to bring into the organization or to help in their development if they're within the organization. And there's a lot of business data metrics as well that we should be utilizing, that we have already within our control, to understand how to attract fans, to retain fans, to understand what their wants and preferences are. And so we're putting a lot of that to good use.
Okay. And last one, just on the kind of big picture stuff before we dive into the teams. I like this one. It came from Glenn Steinke, who's a Dynamo member since 2011. Just plain and simple, what's your number one focus going into the 2022 season?
That's an easy one. That's winning. Now that is a very simplistic answer, so I'll dive into that in a couple ways. As you all know, a significant decision before us is identifying a new GM to bring into the organization, and so we're in the early days of that search, and that is going to be an impactful decision. That's a decision that will have consequences with respect to our ability to succeed or not succeed. And coming from that decision maker is another objective that I have, that I think that we've seen based on our performance, just looking at the number of goals per game that we have, and that is fostering our attack and our ability to execute. And whoever is coming into that GM position is going to have a big seat at the table and identifying players who can fulfill that need. So it's winning, principally based on the selection of a good GM who can identify the requisite talent that we need.
Okay, I think that's a great segue then into kind of getting into some of the Dynamo specific questions. And certainly the GM topic was very popular among the fans. So I'll just grab one from Aaron Foster. He's a Dynamo member since 2016. I just want to know, what are the criteria that you're going to use to select that GM? And then I'll tack onto that as well, if you can, just what the process looks like, and maybe what the kind of timeline you have in your head of, if you don't have to get a specific date, but kind of general timeline you have in mind as well.
Sure. So I know that there's a lot of diehards on this meeting, and so forgive me if I don't identify every single trait that's within our job description and how we're going out there. I'm just going to use that caveat up front. But we're clearly looking for somebody who has demonstrated success in the past, and demonstrating successes again has a number of constituent parts. One is being part and helping grow winning organizations that have succeeded in the past, in terms of playoff appearances or championships, depending on the league that they're in. In addition, success is a proven track record of developing the youth system both from a perspective of channeling those players into the first team and potentially cultivating players that can perform for you or that you can sell on as well. So those are a few metrics. As I've stated before, I think that it is helpful if an individual has familiarity with navigating the specific nuances and intricacies of Major League Soccer, which is distinct in a lot of ways, both in terms of its rules and its play from other leagues. And so those are a few of the high level criteria, but certainly that's not all encompassing. With respect to a timeline, certainly with a number of decisions that we need made currently, as well as looking forward to milestone events that occur in any off season, and hitting the ground running to help our organization and develop some of these structures and processes that we'd like to see take hold as soon as possible. Of course, we'd like to bring in somebody much sooner rather than later. I would say mid-fall, without giving a more specific timeline around that, is the timeline that we have.
I would say mid-fall may be different in New York than in Houston, so we'll leave it as a very vague.
Let's just use the official fall start date of September 21, and people can back out from there.
Fair enough. Next question came from Isaac Diefenbach. He's a Dynamo member since 2008, a Dash member since 2014. And I'm going to read this to you. So he said, as a fan who's been there from the very beginning, in recent years, it's felt like the organization has tried to distance itself from the history and tradition in our only period of sustained success. A movement capped off by a questionable rebranding. The team has lost many long-term fans and season ticket holders along the way. Are there any planned efforts to encourage past players or coaches or staff to get involved with the organization to help bring back the tradition and draw the fans back to the team?
So first of all, I very much welcome the participation and input of our past players. I think it's important for any organization to recognize the great efforts and the significant events in the history of the organization. That's how you can create ties to the past that both your players and your fans can look to. I'll say that in my brief 84 days, and I would say in particular over the last several weeks following the departure of Matt, I've been heartened by the amount of outreach that I've gotten from former players, both in terms of raising their hand and saying that they want to get more involved and offering some of their initial input. And what we intend to do is to create a more specific role of a director of alumni relations to foster those ties to past players. And I do intend to leverage the know-how of some of the alumni in the selection of the GM, because I think that they bring a perspective on the sporting side that is extraordinarily valuable, and they bring a perspective on the community and what would be the right fit in Houston that is valued. Many of you know that Brian Ching has been somebody who's been a longtime friend to our organization, and there's several others that we've been in contact with.
Okay. I guess the next most popular question I think that came up quite a bit was in various ways, specific to spending on the team. So I pulled a couple that I thought kind of covered different areas of it, but Ryan Lefebvre asked, and he's a 2020 Dynamo member, 2021 Dash. You say you're going to give more resources, and you said that I think on Glenn's radio show that you're going to give more resources, but what does that mean? More scouts, more money to the academy, better medical staff? What can you give any clarity on what that might mean?
Yeah, so I think in the context of the conversation with Glenn, and I will reiterate, first and foremost, it's allocation to materially higher player spend in the offseason. I think we all recognize that our current spend is at or near the bottom of the league. That's just not where it should be for a city as large as we have in Houston, and our aspirations for what this club can be. And so again, without getting into specifics, it will be materially higher, and soon that will be a metric that will be open and obvious to everybody to judge us by. So that's on the player personnel side. With respect to other portions of the organization, I think the question hit on a lot of the elements of where we intend to allocate resources. So we are in the midst of a holistic review of our various physical infrastructure. And so there's going to be resources allocated to our physical stadium, which I think will be appreciated from a fan experience standpoint. There's going to be resources allocated to our training grounds, which will be useful for both the comfort and development of the Dynamo and Dash squads, and I think also hopefully in the long run a recruitment tool to bring players here who can see that we are devoting the resources and committed to being a destination for players. And it's also from the player development side. So of course, starting with the GM and some of the programs that we intend to put in place under that person's direction, scouting and otherwise, there's going to be additional resources allocated on those fronts.
And then I think something I probably should have asked earlier, and I saw several questions about this, and I know it's something you touched on with Glenn as well. But going back, probably be remiss if we didn't just touch on the GM search and then how that layers in with the coaching staff and things like that as well from a decision-making standpoint.
So is the question around, will the new GM have input on any decisions that we might have with regards to our current coaching situation?
Yes.
The answer is we expect that there will be input from the GM on that front, on the coaching front. Okay.
And then, like I mentioned earlier, several questions about the academy and kind of player scouting and things like that. Marcelo Alves, who's a member since 2015, asked, is there any plan to attract well-known experienced players? There's a lot of people ask about that, players from this league or that league. And then additionally, any opportunities for collaboration or exchange with clubs? Marcelo asked about Brazil, but from country X.
So I think that as I mentioned again on Glenn's show, there are certain well-known experienced players that we have on a so-called short list. Again, that will be refined by input of the new GM. But we are going to be very judicious in identifying and bringing on so-called well-known players, because we recognize that it's a significant allocation of capital into one or two potentially players. And if you get that wrong, you can get it wrong in a big way. And so we want to get the right players into this organization. And so there's going to be a lot of thought and time devoted to getting the right type of experienced player. I'm not going to state whether there's a preference from one geography or another. We're just trying to get the best possible players that fit into our system of play and fit within our community of Houston. If it is Brazil or country X, great, but I think the primary objective is getting players who help us succeed and win.
Okay. And then lots of questions came in about the Dynamo Academy. Frank Arevalo asked, and he's a member since 18, said FC Dallas is one of the best development academies in the world. What are your plans to improve the Dynamo Academy, to develop young talent in Houston, to improve the pipeline for the first team and professional soccer? And he says, in his opinion, would help financially as well as on the field.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that there were certain programs that were put in place by Matt Jordan that I do think will reap some success in terms of identifying players, giving them more opportunities to play within a specific sub-region within Houston, so that they don't have to bear a significant burden of traveling a long distance to be within our academy system. I know that we've also had experience in terms of I'm going to get the phrase wrong, but homestay situations where the players can again focus their play within kind of under one roof, and so there've been good works done on that front. And again, we've been tackling this from the grassroots. So even from the early stages of soccer starts at home, which we're devoting some more resources to, all the way to kind of the upper reaches of the academy system, and with the development of the U23 league that is going to be coming into place next year. You're seeing that will serve as a bridge between the academy system and our first team, kind of allowing those transitional players to get more experience, more competitive experience that's going to help in their development over the long run.
All right, I want to transition over to the Dash for a little bit. I know a lot of questions about the Dynamo, but certainly got a lot of questions about the Dash as well. Hades Abad, who's a first-year Dash member this year, asked, in what ways or what plans do you have to make the Houston Dash the best team in NWSL?
So with respect to some of the commentary that I've been making, that I hope isn't entirely interpreted as exclusive to the Dynamo, we're allocating those same sorts of resources to the Dash. Excuse me. So with respect to enhancements at the training ground, improving the spaces in which they train, to give them the best possible experience, both for people within our organization at the Dash, and bringing and creating a training facility that is a recruitment tool to bring people to Houston. These are things that are being implemented both on the Dynamo side and on the Dash side.
And Dylan Sides, who's an original Dash member since 2014, I'll read you his question. He said, "We all want to have the Dash fans in the stands to the level at or above Portland. Having sections of the lower bowl tarped off isn't a good look. Having the ticket demand to fully open the upper bowl should be the goal. What steps are being taken to market the Dash to a broader audience?" Well, I'll start with that one, and then we'll kind of hit a couple of different questions. So I guess what's being done, I guess, to market to the broader audience from a Dash?
Yeah. So first I'll agree that it isn't a good look to have the upper section tarped off. And as somebody here who's here in New York, who's attended games at Red Bull Arena, for example, for Gotham FC, and you see the upper bowl tarped off there, it's not what any of us would like to see in the NWSL. We envision these stadiums being filled in their entirety. But if that isn't the reality right now, what I would just state in terms of not being a good look, I think it's even worse if the lower bowl isn't full, and so it's just fans scattered throughout. So I think both from an atmosphere in stadium and on television, having a full lower bowl is superior to having with a tarped off upper bowl is superior to having just kind of a sparsely crowded stadium that is open admission. Now, all of that is inferior to a full stadium, I reiterate, and that's our objective. And I hope to get there one day. How are we going to get there? There is a lot of targeted marketing that we do. A lot of it is online based to find fans who are in particular supportive of the NWSL and the Dash. using our resources to identify and bring those fans to the stadium. I think that's one effort. And then again, there's no substitute for winning. And so the more that they win, the more that they'll be able to attract new fans and grow their fan base. And it's the same objective that we have with the Dynamo on that front.
Okay. And then kind of following on that, Dylan asked, you mentioned having not seen Dash TV commercials. You said, as a longtime fan and season ticket holder, it never seemed like the organization gave much attention to the Dash, and we're only focused on the Dynamo. Will that change under your leadership?
I can assure you that it has already changed. I think speaking for myself and the directives that I'm giving the organization, there needs to be more attention given to the Dash. I'm not just the owner of the Dynamo, I'm the owner of the Dynamo and the Dash. And so resources are being allocated to the Dash, both from a promotional standpoint and from an infrastructure standpoint, as I've touched on already. In addition, there is the sort of recognition standpoint that within the community that can occur in other ways. And so that exists via co-branding the Dash with the Dynamo when permitted by sponsors, and certainly within our own community-oriented events where we're doing good works in the community. It's a outgrowth of the Dynamo and Dash organizations with participation, I hope, oftentimes with Dynamo and Dash players.
And I think we've started to see some of that with players even building relationships across and building friendships across the two teams over the last couple of years. Certainly that was that one club mentality or ethos was part of the rebrand that happened about a year ago, almost a year ago now. And Kira Gesslin, who's a Dash member since 2016, mentioned that, kind of similar to Dylan, said Dash still seem to be treated as second tier, less media promos, lower quality fan experience, banners being removed for Dash games versus Dynamo games, some of the stuff you touched on. But she asked, how was that one club belief system actually being implemented? Is there any tangible change toward that end?
I think I just touched on it in certain ways, and I think you did as well, Zach. Be it in some of these softer ways where we have Dynamo and Dash players supporting one another via social media or at the games, or be it in a more tangible way of co-branding the organizations, be it on sponsorship assets or in community good works efforts. These are the ways that we're trying to create a linkage between the two organizations.
Want to kind of transition now and touch on, you mentioned facilities a little bit earlier, and you kind of alluded to, you're not just the owner of the Dynamo, you're the owner of the Dash, but you're also steward of BBVA Stadium and Houston Sports Park as well from a facility standpoint. Daniel Peterson asked, and he's a member since 2009, what's the likelihood of possible structural changes to the stadium to improve airflow, i.e. opening corners of the stadium or removing seats, installing in-seat air and water coolant systems like they're doing in Qatar for the World Cup, things like that?
So as I mentioned earlier, we are in the midst of a holistic review of our infrastructure. We're awaiting some conclusions and recommendations on that front. And from that, then we will issue a request for proposals from various architecture firms to implement and execute some of these plans. So we are still in the earlier days of that. And again, like many of these things that we're undertaking, be it the acquisition of a high profile player, the selection of our GM, we want to be thoughtful and judicious about how we do it, particularly with respect to something like infrastructure, because once you undertake it, it's hard to undo something if you get it wrong. And if you are undoing it, it probably is coming at great expense and even more inconvenience for our fans. So what I will say is it is certainly under review as to how to create more air corridors for fans who are uncomfortable during the stadium experience. We've done some things and might enhance certain efforts, like adding more fans, large scale fans to the rafters. We are probably coming to the end of the useful life of our seats in the stadium. And so we can make decisions around how to improve the seats from an airflow or heat retention standpoint. And these are just a few of the many things that we're looking at. With respect to what the Qataris are doing for the World Cup and in-seat water cooling systems, I'm not entirely familiar with how those systems work. So I won't definitively opine on that, but it might sound like something that is beyond what we're intending to do for multiple reasons, but probably including the fact that even though the Houston heat is brutal, I think it's next level in Qatar.
I will say, like you, I don't know about the in-seat cooling and things like that, but I will give a quick shout out to our grounds crew. The grass on the pitch at BBVA Stadium is the same grass that will be played on in Qatar next winter. So Dan Bergstrom and his crew have done a phenomenal job getting the pitch back in shape. I know our fans have all commented on, or a lot of them have commented.
It's a good thing to point out, Zach, because it's noticeable both in terms of how it's held up over the course of this season, and it's held up throughout the various conditions that you typically expect in Houston, the extreme heat, the significant amounts of rain that you get, but also from some of the wear and tear that is a result of the various other undertakings and events that occur at BBVA, be it the concert that we had last month at BBVA, or some of the football games that we U.S. football games that we have at BBVA. So all the credit to our grounds crew, because it really is holding up really well.
And I'm actually going to use the grounds crew as kind of a transition. I didn't need to, but I realized I can. Next question came from Antonio Rubio. He's a longtime fan. He was asking about what we're doing to catch up to the rest of MLS in terms of infrastructure. We seem to have one of the smallest training centers in MLS without adequate space for the dash and the academy. I know the grounds crew is building a second pitch out there is one of those things, but looking at HSP, what are some of the things out there that are being done?
Yeah, so you touched on one of the easy ones, which was our approving the construction of a second pitch, which is, again, for a professional soccer club, a no-brainer, and something that I was eager to support. The good thing about Houston Sports Park, and it again fits into our overall holistic assessment, and we're making many determinations as to what we should be doing to execute on it, is that at Houston Sports Park, it is such a significant blank canvas. There is room for us to grow there, be it through the addition of more physical infrastructure to house the Dynamo and Dash, the addition of new pitches, the addition of other new high performance areas. So all of that is falling into this performance study. Again, I know that people are looking for more specifics, and more specifics will be coming in the coming months as we make determinations based on some of the assessments that are currently underway. I will also say that we are undertaking a tour of some of the high performance training grounds of some of our fellow clubs. The great thing about the MLS is that we have ownership that is invested in everybody else's success. And so while we might be playing each other 2 or 3 times a year, and then on those days we're rivals, coming from my first Board of Governors meeting at the end of the month, the All-Star game in Los Angeles, I was struck by the amount of support and idea sharing that was coming from other owners who want to see Houston succeed. And so we're going to take them up on some of their recommendations, and we're going to tour a lot of the stadiums and training grounds to garner best practices as to what we should be doing back at BBVA and at the Houston Sports Park.
That's really great to hear. That's something you don't hear about very often. Is you see about the rivalry on the field, but don't really know what the dynamic is like behind the scenes like that. I do want to transition a little bit to the business side of things. We've got probably 15, 20 minutes left, and there were several questions about ticket sales and attendance, marketing, like I said earlier. So talking just kind of on the ticketing and fan experience side to start with, Jason Mendel, who's a member since 2012, so besides putting together a winning team, what additional strategies are being executed to increase attendance at games, both for Dynamo and for the Dash?
So it is just finding ways to make it an enjoyable experience for the fans, and so again, we're doing this analysis as to how we can enhance the fan experience at the stadium. Part of it is just comfort at the stadium. And so to the earlier question as to what we can do to abate the heat for the fans, that's underway. What are different seating areas that we can enhance or create to improve the fan experience? What can we be doing around the stadium to gather our fans, to create a sense of team and community? As somebody who as I talked about on Glenn's show, a good meal, how can we be improving our concessions? So these are a variety of ways beyond just our performance on the pitch, where we should be trying to make it a memorable, enjoyable experience for fans that makes them want to return.
And I think kind of dovetailing off of that, you mentioned the premium seating. There were several questions about that, several questions about ticket pricing strategy and things like that. Matt Lacey, who's a Dash member, asked, why not decrease ticket prices and try to drive attendance and excitement? Crowd size is a virtuous cycle, he says. Marginal cost of cleaning up from additional fans should easily be offset by the ticket price. Shoot for break even, make the games more exciting. How do you balance that, driving attendance, finding the right ticket pricing, the right price point, things like that?
So there's a whole section of our staff who has expertise on this that I lack. So I might speak in a few simplistic ways about this. Number one, I think that we, as clubs at the Dynamo and Dash, have relatively affordable options for a great game day experience for our fans. And for anyone who's ever been BBVA, my opinion is there's no bad seat in the house. Beyond that, we have certain promotional evenings like the 713 nights, which I think are a great deal, both to get in the building and enjoy some of our concessions at the building. From a more technical standpoint about how to calibrate ticket pricing, you want to be thoughtful about offering a product without creating an expectation in the fan that cheapens the product in the long run. So if we all of a sudden, and I'm not saying we're going to do this, and this is just for the absurdity of the hypothetical, cut our ticket pricing to $1, fans get used to that and will expect that the price of admission is going to be $1, and that's not a tenable situation, nor do I think that adequately appropriately reflects the value of our clubs.
Okay. And then this is a question from Larry Rose. He's an original member since 2006. He asked, when do we go back to having annual original members with management? Obviously, that's something that predates you. So I'll ask in terms of what are your plans for, I guess, that fan engagement in whatever shape or form under your leadership?
So I'll put it to my staff at the organization. I think that all of us should be more engaged with our fans. We should make ourselves available. Speaking for myself, beyond the directives that I'm giving to our management, who I have seen around the facilities making themselves very much available, but I will continue to reiterate that level of accessibility for them. Is on a personal basis, making myself available, be it in this forum, be it when I'm at the stadium, be it on shows like Glenn Davis's and others, to know that I'm somebody who recognizes and values the support that our fans give, and recognizes the input that they have, because without them, there's really no clubs here. It's all about the fans, and without them, we don't have organizations.
Very well said. All right, transitioning over to marketing, promotion of the team, community outreach, things like that. Chris Menzel is another original member since 2006. Had kind of a long question, so I'll read it here. He said, when Houston first began as a franchise in MLS, we had great media coverage. There was good, strong English-speaking radio outlet for all of our games. There was good television coverage for our games on the regional sports channel. Now the only radio outlet available is Spanish and or difficult to pick up. Local TV never mentions the Dynamo, or hardly does. Even local radio, Dynamo only mentions 1 or 2 hour shows like Glenn Davis. No one calls in or seems to care about the team, and it's contributing to the decline of the Dynamo as a relevant sports entity. What plans does the organization have to change that?
So I think there are elements, small and large. There are elements like getting us back on ESPN radio, and I think in this year and the year ahead, that's occurring to some extent. But a big driver of this, and how you maintain attention and of the press and the community, is by winning. It's easy to become an afterthought when you're at the bottom of the table. And so what we're gonna try to do is build a successful club, because the media will have no attention they will have no choice but to provide attention for our organization if we're winning, if our stadium is packed, and if we're capturing the attention of our community. But Zach, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you're somebody whose day-to-day job is consumed in big part by this. What are some thoughts that you have on this front?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of where I made my whole career, was in media relations, and certainly I think obviously winning helps, but there's a lot that we can do in terms of really pitching stories, being more aggressive. We're in a position right now where people aren't just lined up to come cover us on a day-to-day basis. So we have to continue to be more aggressive. And that's something one of our big points of focus going out into 2022, both for Dynamo and Dash, is really trying to tell the story of who our players are, not just as professionals, but as people as well. And then real quick, Chris, to your point about that no one calls in or cares about the team, if I can give a real quick 30-second spiel to all the folks that are on here, the one thing you guys can do, 3 things: call, click, and comment. I talk to news directors and editors all the time. They all say, I wish we could give you more coverage. I can't justify it to my bosses. They look at engagement rates. They look at clicks on their website. They look at who's calling into radio shows. Even if you call in and they don't put you on, keep calling. They're going to eventually have to do it. So I think as soccer fans, and I'm a fan myself, we have to demand the coverage that we want, and then we have to reward the people that are covering it by clicking on their stories too. So that's my quick spiel. Going back into promoting the teams here, Alejandro Zamora Jr., as a new member in 2019, asked, what are some of the steps that the team is taking to promote Dynamo and Dash in advertisements, commercials, things like that?
So I think one of the steps is probably upping our advertising budget. I think we've done it over the last couple of years, and I think that we're going to continue our ad spend to increase awareness on that front. And that's through a variety of media channels, be it your more conventional old school media, be it newspapers or TV. Or more targeted new media through digital. I think work that we can be doing is fostering and enhancing our ties with our corporate sponsors to increase and promote increase awareness and promote awareness of the Dynamo. So that's something that I think we should continue to set our sights on. And then beyond the advertising element of promoting the Dynamo, and I've said it before, it's getting out there in the community from a community service and charity standpoint. That's something that I've been pushing. I'm going to continue to push, and of course that beyond the good work that's being done, enhances the awareness of the Dynamo and Dash in our community.
Okay, and then kind of to that point of community outreach, Jeff Organ, who's another 06 original member, asked, except for the suburban soccer clubs, the Dynamo and Dash have done a poor job of fan and grassroots outreach in Houston, especially large number of soccer players and fans, i.e. adult leagues, Hispanic and Asian leagues, the fans of the European teams and the Mexican teams, high school, college teams, things like that. Are there any plans to change this strategy and instead connect with these groups who are passionate about soccer versus the generic sports marketing strategies to try and attract random Houstonians who may not care about the sport?
Absolutely. And so I think there needs to be a rededication to outreach of these organizations. I know we have had historically a street team. The circumstances of COVID have probably made that a more challenging sort of outreach. But I think going forward, as we emerge from certainly the challenging conditions of 2020, we need to be putting our grassroots resources into the various community events, the various soccer-related events from youth to adult that exist throughout our community, and they're extensive. And the beauty of Houston is that it is so large and so diverse that it can almost seem overwhelming to, or impossible rather, to get to all of them. But we need to enhance our efforts to get ourselves out there to the various community events and the various Soccer Sunday events that occur throughout our community throughout the year.
And guys, I know we're coming up on 7. We started a few minutes late, so I want to try and steal a couple minutes here at the end just to wrap things up. Ted, these are last couple just more big picture again. Justin Highland, who's a former Dynamo member, asked, he said, I was a Dynamo member from 2006 to 2016. Now that you've taken over as majority owner, give me a tangible reason why I should come back.
Well, I don't expect Justin to judge me by what I'm projecting is going to be done in the offseason, and these things are going to happen. Like the player spend that's going to occur in the offseason, like the allocation of capital to our infrastructure that's going to happen in the offseason. What I can say that has tangibly occurred to date, which is challenging to do when you're 84 days in and you take over at the end of June, mid-season, is we've already allocated resources to certain players, be it bringing on Teenage, bringing on some of the other players, be it Coco or Corey Baird or Griffin Dorsey. So we've already been allocating resources to the roster, and I'll say that there's going to be significantly more capital allocated in the offseason on that front. We've already announced that we're going to be implementing safe standing in this coming offseason, and that's just the easiest thing that we can do from an infrastructure standpoint. We've already added another training pitch to our training grounds. So these are specific examples of the longer term objective. We've already allocated resources to various Dynamo charities, various community charities. There's going to be a lot more done on that front going forward. Of course, the ultimate metric is winning, and we haven't done that much over the course of the season. So long term, I'll say that's how all fans should judge how we're performing. But everything that I just outlined is with the intention of creating that winning organization.
Okay. And then one last one, I really like this one as I was going through the questions. I think it's a great way to kind of wrap things up. Christopher Wright, who's a member since 2019, asked, if you could sum up what you want the club's identity to be in a few words, what would that be?
Again, I don't want to delve into cliches, and I don't know how many people watched Monday Night Football last night, but it might be cliche now, but it started as something that carried a lot of weight, and it still does. And the Raiders' old phrase, a commitment to excellence, and that has application in so many ways. Of course, it has application as to how the team is performing in the table. And so our commitment is to building a winning club that succeeds on and off the pitch, that's winning games, that's a force for good in our community, that has a first-class training ground for our clubs. And so commitment to excellence is an oft used, but I think a still important phrase that we can apply here.
Awesome. I think that's a great way to end things. Guys, I know I wasn't able to get to everybody's questions, but I hope that we were able to cover the topics that all of you, most of you at least, submitted questions about. So I want to thank all of y'all for spending an hour with us. Ted, thank you very much for taking some time out of your schedule. I know you've got a family at home, and I'm sure you have dinner plans and things like that. So thanks for taking some time out of the evening to help us get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I just want to say thank you again to all the fans who joined tonight. It's a commitment of an hour of your guys' time, and I certainly recognize your devotion to this club, and I just want to do right by you. So thank you again.